Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Darkest Hour. I'm your host, Amanda Jane. Someone once said, demons aren't always what people traditionally expect them to be. If they only offered us fear or something to be afraid of, we'd never interact with them. They have to offer something in exchange for our attention, and ultimately, our devotion, conscious or not. They can work as mysteriously as miracles themselves. That's how they disguise themselves so well. Now, whether you believe in demons or not, in the literal sense, it is an interesting thought. Scary, but interesting. Tonight, we'll hear from others about their experiences with potential demons, ghosts, but also the stories that involve the kind of uncomfortableness that only a creepy human being can provide. So, let's get started, shall we? This is something that happened back in 2006. I was 26 and traveling down I-80 across state lines with my boyfriend at the time, who we'll call Chris. We'd been pretty avid travelers for the better part of 2005, 2006. This was our first trip just following I-80 from San Fran to New York. The most memorable stop of the whole trip wasn't our destination, unfortunately. It was when we stayed in Superior, Wyoming, or just slightly outside of it, I guess. We'd wanted to stop there to spend a day in the ice caves, but we ended up getting there a little bit too late in the day to do the hike. So we decided we'd grab a room at the Mint Motel. That's when the first weird thing happened. I'm standing there while Chris checks us into our room, and a lady approaches me. She's wearing a uniform that would indicate that she's a waitress at the diner next door. "Lisa, what the heck are you doing here? I thought you were all tied up with your mans tonight." My name isn't Lisa, but this woman is looking and talking to me like I'm definitely her. I smile and tell her, "Oh, I'm sorry, I think you've got me mixed up with someone else." She smiles, laughs, brushes me on the shoulder, tells me haha, very funny. But when I don't budge, she gives me another look, like she's really examining my face. Awkwardly, I offer my name. "I'm Alex, just visiting with my boyfriend over there." I turn to point to Chris. I turn back and she's just staring at me. Eventually, she snaps herself out of it and says, "I'm sorry. I'm Mary, and wow, my mistake. You are a dead ringer for my friend Lisa. I mean, you two could be twins." I shared an uncomfortable laugh and just dismissed the whole thing as a case of mistaken identity. No worries. I was so unshook I didn't even tell my boyfriend about it when he finished at the front desk. We drop off our stuff in the room, and we head over to the diner to grab some food before ultimately retiring to bed. We grab a seat by the window and wait for someone to take our order. The woman who approaches our table is the woman from the lobby. "Oh, hey again. Alex, right?" I tell her that's right, and this is my boyfriend, Chris. They shake hands, she takes our order, and when she's gone, Chris asks me about my new friend. So I tell him about the lobby experience, and he, like me, shrugged it off. Before our food came, the waitress returns, but this time she's with someone else, another woman. "I'm so sorry to bug you, but I just had to show Angie here, the girl that looks like Lisa's twin. Doesn't she look just like her Ange?" I watch as Ange, gave me a stare down, the same one that Mary had given me earlier. She agrees and says, "Wow, yeah. No, you could definitely be Lisa." Angie seems uncomfortable, like she doesn't like how much I look like Lisa. They excuse themselves, apologize for interrupting, and walk away. Strange, but okay. We finished our meal, went back to our room, and watched some TV. Before going to bed, we decided to go to the gas station down the street to grab some snacks and waters for the morning at the ice caves. Chris pumps the gas, and I give him a quick kiss, and then I head inside. The moment I step foot in the store, I feel like someone's looking at me. I peruse the aisle in front of me for a moment, and then I look up. About 10 feet away from me are two dudes staring at me. They then wave at me, almost menacingly. I divert my eyes and I finish my shopping, probably forgetting to grab something, but I feel uncomfortable and I want to leave. I approach the clerk and I'm getting the same stare. What the fuck? They ring me up, slowly, very slowly, and I can feel that someone is now behind me in line. I know it's those two dudes, because they're not in my peripherals anymore. From what I can tell, there's only 3 other people in this store, but it feels like there's a million eyes all over me. Finally, I pay the man, and I walk out a bit faster than I normally would. I hear the two yell something like, "Who's that dude you're with?" But the door closes before he really finishes the sentence. Chris is done pumping the gas, and so I hop in the car. I know I'm acting nervous, so I just say, "Those dudes inside, they were staring, trying to talk to me. I'd rather we just get going before they come out." Chris doesn't hesitate, but he keeps looking inside the store at the guys, like he was trying to get a good look at them or something. Then he transitioned to looking in the mirrors, and so I start looking in the mirrors. I see a truck pulling out of the gas station where we just pulled out of. I ask him, "Is that them? In that truck? Are they following us?" He doesn't answer me immediately. We're about 200 feet from the motel when he starts explaining that we're going to pull in front of the office and get out there, that if these guys are following us, he wants them to have to approach us in front of people where it's well lit. Looking back, I see the truck is still behind us. We barely park before I'm out of the car, and the truck is already pulling up to the closest spot available. And they, too, are getting out of the truck. Chris springs into action, sliding across the hood to position himself in front of me. And for what feels like minutes, we stand there. It feels like we're just waiting for these guys to approach, and when they do, they look straight at me and say, "What the hell, Lisa? Who's this guy you're kissing on?" Before either of us can get a word in, the other guy pipes up, "Yeah, Lisa, what the hell? Does Steve know you're out here with this dweeb?" Chris sort of laughs and says something like, "Oh, this again." The guys shift their gaze to Chris and say something like, "Listen, buddy," and Chris cuts him off. "No, actually, you two listen. This girl here, her name is Alex. My name is Chris. Alex is my girlfriend. We don't know who Lisa is, but it's like not her, okay? You got the wrong person, so please just be on your way so we can call it a night." The guys look less upset, but they look more confused. Then one of the guys who's really been staring at me the whole time says that he's not buying it. No way, man. That is Lisa," pointing at me. He continues, "Come on, Lisa, this is ridiculous." "Guys, I don't know what you want from me. I'm not Lisa." Then I think, oh duh, and I say, "Look, I can prove it. Here's my ID." Chris stops me from grabbing my ID and says, "No way. Don't show these guys where you live. You don't owe them anything." They keep looking at me, and the one that's been mostly quiet says to the other, "Whatever, man. Let's just call Steve. Get him down here and let him decide what's what." "How about that? Not Lisa. We'll just call your actual boyfriend, and him and this guy can duke it out." I can tell he's really expecting me to be upset, to react in some way to what he's just told me and what he's doing. But I just tell them, "Yeah, actually, that's a good idea. Just call your friend. I'm sure he can clear this up for you two. I tap Chris's shoulder and I say, let's go. The one guy steps in front of us and says, no, I think you two should wait for Steve. Chris is about to say something. He's getting heated at this point. But then the guy on the phone taps his buddy and says, Steve says he's with Lisa right now. They're at the bowling alley in Rock Springs. Chris and I watched as the color drained out of these two guys' faces. They went from being so sure of something to being almost afraid of something. They both just sort of stand there, looking at us. They don't hang up their phone, but they don't say anything. So Chris and I start walking back to the room. This time, they don't stop us at all. They just watch in disbelief as we walk away. I turned around 2 or 3 times and they were still staring. After Chris and I talked about it for a while, we started kicking ourselves for not asking to see a picture of Lisa, or even get her last name so we could look her up somehow. We both agreed that all these people really thought I was this person. Their looks would go from, I know you, even, hello, old friend. But then they would all turn to, okay, bye now, unsettling. We eventually fell asleep, but I have the strangest dream that night. It was me laying in bed, and then it was also me standing at the end of the bed. Somehow I could see both of me's viewing from a bird's eye position, but I could also change my position. Only when I was in bed, or when I stood at the end of the bed, I saw no one floating above. I could control what I was doing in this dream, or at least that's how it felt. I chose the bird's eye position, and I was waiting for something to happen. The room was well lit, but aside from my other self, I was alone. There was no Chris. The version of me at the end of the bed began to shake the one who was still laying in the bed. It looked painful, but I couldn't feel it. I woke up suddenly and was sweating. I felt pins and needles all over. Very unusual. Then I felt like I may be sick. I have no idea why. I stood up and I was very lightheaded, so I just stood there a moment. After about 30 seconds, I felt great, ready to go back to sleep, actually. When I woke up, I recapped as much of my dream as I could to myself, and I thought about it until Chris woke up. When I told him about the dream, he was sure that it was the result of us thinking about this other chick so much. He said he had a dream too, but he wouldn't elaborate other than, yeah, it was like she was your twin, or there was 2 of you. Basically the same dream, right? So it's the next morning, and we're still talking about the whole event, and Chris says, we should go see if anyone at the diner has a picture of this Lisa girl. I'm curious, but I'm also hesitant. I agree, and we head over to grab some coffee. I look around for Mary, the first person to mistake my identity, but she's not around. Chris starts to say something, but I get that lightheaded feeling again, and I can't hear him. I start to almost see what I can only describe as double vision, with more vivid colors. Then, as everything slowly starts to go back to normal, no colors or vision issues, I hear from my left a woman's voice. Did you forget something, sweetheart? Then she stops, looks at Chris, then back at me. Then she looks me over, examining my outfit, my shoes, and Chris pipes up saying, hey, she's not Lisa, and this might sound weird, but do you happen to have a picture of her, this Lisa, or do you know where she might be? Was she just here? Is that why you thought my girlfriend forgot something? I squeeze Chris's arm, asking him silently to stop, and he just had to get one last sentence out. Just any way to find her would be great. She stares at us for a moment, and then looks at me longer than necessary, says nothing. She just looks around, almost frantically, before saying, no, I don't have any pictures, sorry. And then she walks away, but all while still staring at me, terrified. I look at Chris. He shrugs. I tell him we're getting coffee somewhere else, and we walk away. We load into the car and we're headed to the ice caves. But I just don't want to be in this town anymore. I tell him, let's go straight through, and if we want to hit the ice caves, we can do it on the way back to Cali. He tells me he thinks that we should go, and that we should keep trying to find this Lisa person too. I couldn't give him a good reason, but I just felt like everything in me was saying no. I'm not supposed to be here or something. Without too much debate, Chris agrees that we can make our way out of town. I'm relieved, but I don't feel entirely better. We're passing the last gas station in town, making our way to the light to get from the 371 to I-80. And Chris goes, "Holy shit, Alex. Holy shit, that's her." I sit straight up and I try to see which car or person he's referring to. Where? I don't know which car you're talking about. His head is now turning to the left, and then he moves to looking in the rearview mirror. "Alex, that girl, the one in the brownish car, that's definitely Lisa. Like, you're sitting right next to me, but I swear to God, I also just saw you in that car. She's even got the same hair as you, like wearing it the same and everything. That's kind of scary, actually. Wow. Oh my God, I know I sound like those people, but wow." He's kind of rambling with this level of excitement or amazement, and I just don't know what to say. As I look back at the brownish car, it's continuing its way towards Superior. But all I see is a black mass that seems to fill the entire interior of the car. It's like you couldn't see the seats on the car, or the heads of the people. Just a pulsating darkness. I don't say a thing, but I think to myself, yeah, I don't want to be here anymore. I managed to say to Chris, "Let's just go. I don't really care. I'm not going to approach this person, so maybe let's just drop it." He doesn't seem to get it, and he insists that we turn around and follow these people. Get a photo or some shit. I don't know how to tell him that I just saw a black mass invade that same car that he wants to follow, so I don't. I just patiently-ish say, "Let's just get the hell out of here, please?" I remember he sort of sighed or moped a bit, but ultimately he stayed en route. After a while, I started to get almost worried. I mean, he was silent for a long time, which was unusual. Eventually, he broke the silence with an apology. "I'm really sorry I insisted on you meeting this Lisa chick and following those people or whatever. Like, I don't know why I did that." I reassure him it's fine, but he stops and he tells me, "No, Alex, it's more than that. It's like I didn't actually think that we should follow that car. I actually was really uncomfortable with the idea, but somehow I was suggesting it. And I don't know, just really sorry about that." I told him about the feelings that I got from the idea of staying in that town. I tell him about the black mass. At first, he's supportive of what I say. After several minutes, though, he says, "A black mass, huh? You don't think you're like possessed or something, right?" Not gonna lie, I was sort of offended or irked by this. "Do I think I'm possessed? No, Chris, I don't think I'm possessed." Then I feel bad, like maybe I shut him down. So after some time, say, "I was thinking more like a doppelganger, a fancy way to say long-lost twin. Like, couldn't that be something? I don't know exactly what it means, but people have talked about them being a thing before, right?" now this is where Chris and I ultimately disagree about the whole experience. I mean, it goes deeper than just this experience. We aren't together anymore, after all. But he believes it to be the work of the devil, that I'm possessed, or that something was trying to possess me while I was there. We just go back and forth on how illogical each other's ideas are. He doesn't believe in doppelgängers, and I don't know what I believe in, but I certainly don't feel possessed. Maybe neither of our theories are correct. I just know I had that feeling, the I don't think we should meet, and I wasn't even sure why. Only later did I learn that you shouldn't interact with your other self. So that feels like my intuition doing its job, and me doing mine by listening. The dream I had that night, it also felt more like a hallucination. Then there's the dark mass. I mean, what does that mean? What is that about? It doesn't seem to fit with most accounts of potential doppelgängers, but I'm not sure. Most eerie to me was probably the way the people looked at me. They really saw someone else at first. In a very small town, they mistook me for this person that they see every single day, seems like. And when they had to accept I wasn't her, they almost looked afraid. To my knowledge, Chris has never been back to Superior, and neither have I. We definitely didn't stop there on the way back. It's amazing how many other ice caves you can find when you're really trying just to avoid one. Today I was upstairs in my computer office room, doing my college homework. I've lived in this house my whole life, and very rarely something out of the ordinary happens. Occasionally, in the office room upstairs, I hear weird noises that sound like an elephant does, or a whimpering. I ignore it since it's probably just the wind and nothing to worry about. Yesterday, when I was up there at night, the lights just completely died, leaving me in the dark. Naturally, I jumped a little bit, but I replaced the light bulb and moved on with everything. So now, today, just a few hours ago, made me really scared. I was upstairs working on an art project. I had my laptop on Discord talking to two of my friends as I was doing the project. I had no headphones in or anything. Also, it was just me and my sister who were home. She was downstairs in her room, watching a movie. All of a sudden, the door to the room I was in freaked me out. I heard 3 loud knocks on the door. It genuinely sounded like someone was outside the door. I thought it was my sister at first, so I shouted, "What?" No response. I open the door and nobody is there. I immediately look at the staircase and nobody. I yell for my sister. She says she was in her room the whole time. I believe her because there's no possible way that she could have physically knocked on the door and ran down the stairs that fast. I would have heard her. Since then, I've been scared to go in that room because now I'm pretty convinced something's wrong. If anyone can give me any form of advice on what to do, I would appreciate it. Thank you. When I was 13 years old, my father and I would take daily trips to our local laundromat to do our drying because while we had a washing machine at home, our dryer had died and we couldn't afford a new one. Usually we'd just sit in the car in the parking lot and listen to the radio, or go for a drive along the river. However, with the winter weather quickly approaching, my father needed to get new wiper blades for his windshield wipers and decided to drive up the road to Walmart. While he went to the automotive section, I decided to go over to the books and magazines to see if they had anything that interested me. As I perused the shelves looking at the graphic novels and paperback books, I heard a kind of soft sobbing coming from behind me. I walked to the end of the aisle and saw the source was a guy a few aisles over, sitting on a bench near the pharmacy section. He saw me looking at him and stood up and moved down an adjacent aisle. Returning to what I was doing, I decided on getting Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 3 titled Double Trouble, and I was about to join my father in the automotive section when he texted me and asked me to grab some deodorant from the health and beauty. I walked down a few aisles to the health and beauty section, and that's when I saw the guy. He was just standing, staring at the shaving cream, still sobbing. I just shook my head and grabbed a thing of Old Spice deodorant, my father's brand, and I was about to leave when I heard a loud huffing sound, followed by a loud grunting. I turned to see the sad guy, standing there, holding a razor blade in his left fingers, stained with blood, and blood pouring from the wrist on his right arm. I immediately ran from the aisle, looking for someone, and found an employee nearby stocking shelves. "Help! I shouted, pointing to the health and beauty section. "A guy just slit his wrists over there." The next several minutes were a blur of employees and paramedics who rushed over to help the guy. My father and I watched as he was wheeled out on a stretcher and loaded into the ambulance. According to the newspaper a few days later, the guy survived his wounds, having sliced horizontally instead of vertically. Turns out he'd been newly divorced from his wife of 10 years and didn't want to be alone. I hope he got the help that he needed and didn't try to hurt himself again. I'm from Japan, and I've had several paranormal or inexplicable experiences throughout my life, although I'm still a skeptic. I decided to share one of my stories with the hope of hearing from others about similar experiences. To this day, I still wonder if it was an actual human being or something else. When I was 14, my family and I went on a trip to a rural place in a prefecture called Nagano. We had to drive through the mountains for a while. When we drove past a parking lot on the side of the mountain road, I heard a man's voice saying,
"Excuse me."
The voice sounded sort of devoid of energy or soulless, yet it was so clear. It sounded so lifeless that I got the impression that he was injured and asking for help. But at the same time, it sounded like my brain had played tricks on my ears, so I ignored it. In Japan, we call it sky ear when you hear things that aren't there. So about 5 seconds after hearing the voice, I told my family, "I just heard sky ear." My brother said, "Me too." My father, who was driving, looked back and said, "Someone said, 'Excuse me,' right?" My brother then responded, "I heard, 'Help me.'" My father took a U-turn and drove back. He parked on the side of the parking lot, got out with my brother, and started looking for the person. There were a few cars parked, so they were even looking under the cars. My mom, who was sitting behind me, was confused because she had not heard a voice at all. At this point, we didn't think it was anything paranormal. We were concerned that there may be someone injured or dying. But while waiting in the car, both my mother and I suddenly started feeling spooked out. My mother was especially freaking out, saying, "I'm feeling really scared all of a sudden." My father and my brother came back into the car, looking confused. My father kept saying that it was surreal because they went to see if there was anywhere that a person could have gone, but there was no path behind the parking lot. It was sort of just a steep cliff, and there was no soul in any of the cars or down the cliff. I still remember what the voice sounded like. It was an adult male voice. It sounded so flat and monotonous that you would think whoever said it wasn't quite alive. Have you ever heard a voice like that? We were arriving at my friend's coworker's house after work. There were 5 of us, and her boyfriend was already home. It was around 10:30 p.m., and as we entered the small duplex, I locked the front door behind me from habit. Not 30 seconds after I made it to her bedroom, 5 feet away, I heard someone trying to open the front door. I proceeded to ask if she or her boyfriend were expecting anyone over, and they said no. Her boyfriend went to the door as the person outside started knocking. We looked outside to see someone in a hoodie, pulled all the way over where his face was obscured from the side. Her boyfriend asked through the door what he needed, and he answered that he was locked out of his house. He needed to borrow a phone. Her boyfriend told him no, and the guy says, "Come on, man, just open the door." We said no and to leave. There was a 24-hour gas station literally across the street. 15 minutes later, I see someone peek into the living room, and someone again tried to open the door. We all come to the door and yell through, telling him to leave. He keeps saying, "I don't know why you can't just open the door. Just open the door and let me use your phone." We said no, and he eventually left. While he was outnumbered, we didn't know if there was someone with him hiding, if he had a gun, etc. What mainly freaked me out was that he kept trying the door before knocking. My first year out of high school, I got a job working on the promo team at what was then the Key Arena and is now the Climate Pledge Arena. If you've ever been to a sporting event, we're the people who hand you shit at the doors when you come in, and then we run onto the court and throw t-shirts during halftime. The pay was garbage, but I'll never forget having the opportunity to watch so many NBA games from the tunnels. The ones under the seats that lead to the locker rooms, the kitchens, etc. I actually don't know what is all in the tunnels because they're so massive. I've only been able to see locker rooms, kitchen, promo break room, and a couple offices. The highlight of my promo career was tossing Sean Kemp a water before they went onto the court. He didn't say thank you, but I'm sure that was just adrenaline. He knows who had his back that night. Some nights I'd be scheduled to work the Seattle Storm games. It's a shame their attendance isn't larger for how talented these ladies are. It was actually one of these nights where this incident occurred. And it would be the last time that I saw these parts of the Key Arena. Me and this girl are walking down one of the corridors to grab a couple of t-shirt boxes to fold and rubber band in preparation for halftime. She mentions how cold it is, and I must agree, although it is only cold stone that makes up the walls of these tunnels. The direction we were going in, it was becoming noticeably colder. I'm only slightly behind her when I feel a cold wind brush, not against me, more like through me. At almost the exact same moment, she turns around and sorta swats something away from her ear and says, "Hey, so not funny." Confused, I gave her a what the heck kind of look. Trying to scare me, blowing in my ear. I tell her that for real, I didn't do that. She scoffs and we keep walking. Whatever. There's no point in trying to convince her it wasn't me. But there was a part of me that wanted to tell her about the cold rush I'd felt. She was walking even more ahead of me now, looking down and off to the side. Probably because she thought I was going to try to scare her again. I noticed that just ahead of her, in the room that we need to go in. It looks like something standing in the doorway, in the dark. I wasn't going to let this one slip away, so I said to her, "You see that, right? In the doorway. What is that?" She stops in her tracks after looking up. There's clearly a dark shadow figure standing in the doorway. Once I reach her, I stop next to her and ask what she thinks. Like, should anyone be back here? Is that even a person? Basically, I'm asking her things and she's ignoring me. I look over at her and she's in some sort of trance. She won't blink. So I tell her, "I'm leaving," and I start to walk away. I get pretty far down and she doesn't follow me, just keeps staring forward at the figure in the doorway, with her back towards me. The figure in the doorway hadn't moved either, so I decided that it was some sort of life-size cardboard cutout, maybe of one of the players, since it was pretty tall. It was just sitting in the dark, that's all. I ask her, "Okay, do you want me to go first or something?" She still doesn't say anything. At this point, we're going to be late, so I tell her to just give me the keys and I'll go grab them from the back room, and she can head back. As I'm walking back towards her, the figure in the doorway does the same. I freeze, and so does the figure, except it's no longer in the dark doorway. It's hovering in the hallway, directly in front of this chick, but still a good 30 feet away from her. It was taller than either of us, and it was bobbing up and down, quickly yet slowly. Think ink moving in water, but in slow motion. I started to feel as though I couldn't move my feet, so instead of continuing towards the girl, I test out my feet by running them and booking it in the other direction. I decided I wanted to exit, with or without her accompanying me. I can't go running into the stadium acting like this, or they'll probably commit me. So I make my way to the nearest exit as quickly as I can. Except it's not an exit to the outside. It's just an exit into more of the corridor. That probably leads to an exit eventually. Normally, when you enter a section through the tunnels, the motion lights are activated. So why weren't they turning on in this room? I stop running, still trying to decide what to do next. Run into the darkness to my right, possibly encounter another one of those things, or go back through the corridor to my left to the entrance of the tunnel. I decide to head back toward the corridor to my left. I then hear the girl pummeling down the hallway, screaming and possibly crying. She passes by the entryway to the section I'm standing in. She's going so fast, she looks like a total blur as she does. I stop walking and wait to see if she's followed by the inky black thing. When it doesn't happen, I make a mad dash for the entrance to the tunnel. It also doesn't look like the game was disrupted in any way, but it was almost halftime and I definitely wasn't geared up to do my job. I don't see the girl anywhere. I do see my boss across the court, diagonal from where I'm standing. She's motioning for me to stop where I am, that she's coming to me. When she reaches me, she's asking for an explanation as to why my counterpart just came out of this area screaming her head off, without any t-shirts. She tells me that she's going to go find the girl, and I need to go down the corridor to get the t-shirts, as many as I can carry. Ego, pride, disbelief, I don't know what the hell it was, but I could not bring myself to tell this lady that I was afraid of the shadow inky thing down the corridor. She was already gone before I could piece together that I didn't have the keys to the back room. Once she's gone, I realize I'm not going back down the corridor either way. On my way out, I see the two of them. The girl, who was definitely crying and trying to form sentences for the boss, who had her back to me. I don't actually care if she sees me. I think I've had a great 6 months working here, all good times, till now. I don't need to come back, ever. So I respectfully nope my way out of there, and I make my way home. I never did see the girl again, or the boss lady. No one actually even called to follow up with me, which in retrospect is sort of messed up, but whatever. I guess what's most important is that I never had to see that thing again. I do wonder, though, does it still exist, even after all the construction? Curious. And so we've reached the end of tonight's episode. But be sure to join me every Friday night for a brand new one. Thank you to everyone for listening. And also, thanks so much to everyone who shared their stories. If you're not already, be sure to hit that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, and if you like this episode, give it a like. You can and probably should follow The Darkest Hour on Instagram at thedarkesthouryt. Do you have stories like these? I'd love to share them. Send them to me, amandadarkesthour@gmail.com. Stay spooky.